These are two separate gas tanks. Each one hold about 2.5 to 3 gallons. And it's for Fabio's bike. Basically what you see is what you get. There's no bodywork, no paint, no nothing over it. So all the welds have to be legit and presentable, so it don't look like a beginner welded it. And those, what I'm putting in now are the bungs. These are bungs that hold the gas tanks to the frame. This is a bung for the petcock, for the petcock to bolt to for your fuel line. These are the crossover lines, so it'll fuel will cross over from one side to the other. And then what we'll do here is I'll weld these in. I'll TIG weld these in. If you TIG it, between TIG and MIG is you're using wire and melting wire. With TIG, you're melting a rod using electricity. You could basically fuse this together, or you can use a filler rod, whichever you prefer. But if you're going to use anything with strength, you'd want to use a filler rod. And if you can TIG weld really well, you don't really have to do anything to the welds as far as grinding them and whatnot. You should be able to just lay a nice bead, and they can do the bodywork right over the top of that. And on tungstens, you use different size tungstens for different size material that you're welding. So you don't want to use a tungsten that's a 1/4 inch rod when you're welding 16 gauge. You want to use about an 1/8 inch tungsten when you're welding any type of 18, 16, 14 gauge material. And when you weld, you want to weld on one side, come back and weld the other side, otherwise it'll tend to pull to one side if you stay to the one side. Yeah, what you do is you get the tip of this about 1/8 of an inch away from the material, and like this bung is 1/4 of an inch thick, and this material is 16 gauge, so you want to tend to put the point more on the thick part. And then what it'll do is the further I press the pedal, the more penetration, the hotter that gets, and it'll create a puddle. And then when you get the right size puddle you want, you don't just hammer this pedal all the way down. You work the pedal till you get the puddle you want, and then you start filling the puddle in as you go around it. Everybody welds different, and the key to welding for me is you gotta know what you're working with, and you gotta be comfortable. You have to get comfortable weld. Some people can sit up here and hold this with one hand and do it where other people might shake, so you gotta get steady and rest against something. I tend to use my fingers as a point of rest and use my hand. But TIG welding is a lot more tedious welding than wire welding. MIG welding, you can lay a bead real fast. TIG welding is really time consuming. On a TIG welding, TIG will penetrate more than a MIG welder, depending on what you're welding. But on something like this, when Fabio wants the industrial look, so pretty much that weld right there is what you're going to get. People are going to look at that, and that's what you're going to see. So there's no going back grinding, none of that. Usually if I was to get the bodywork and paint on this, time they spread the Bondo all over it, you don't see no welds. I mean, you could have a beginner weld it, and it could be just fine.